Today we're going to do the last of the versus battles. We have the claws versus the fists. We've already covered every other type of weapon class and had a different opponent to go up against it. But today we have these two bad boys right here. Now the fists and the claws are very similar in that they can be power stance when two-handed. Both have very quick movesets. Don't really have much range as well. But they actually are pretty decent in both PvE and PvP. So we're going to have a bunch of different categories, pit them up against each other and see which one is best for which scenario. As always, please do like and subscribe. And by the time this video is out, I should be live on Twitch. So definitely check me out there. But yeah, that way, let's get into it. Starting off with variety, we have the fist weapons here. Now, these are actually pretty decent in terms of what variety they actually do have. Do have something that's good for strength, dexterity, do have quality options as well. Something good for bleed in the spike cestus and the star fist. Stuff with differing movesets in the cestus, the iron ball in the katar. Do have stuff that cannot be infused that have unique ashes of war in the grafted dragon, cipher and veteran prosthesis. So overall, it's actually pretty decent. It is definitely missing an intelligence option, but overall, probably end up giving it about a high B tier. As for the claw weapons, I definitely cannot say the same thing. I think this is the only weapon class that actually doesn't get a unique type of weapon. All of these actually can be infused. Now, in terms of like variety, what they have, you have a strength option and a dexterity option. Do have something with poison. The rest actually do bleed. And the only one that the differing moveset is the raptor talons. So yeah, overall, probably have to give it a C tier. Hopefully the DLC does come out with a bunch more claws. That would be very nice. Okay, now getting into the moveset. Now, normally I just talk about the basic and generic movesets that these weapon classes do actually get. However, with the fist weapons themselves, most of them actually all get very differing movesets, so I don't really know what the basic and generic fist moveset actually is. But getting into it themselves, we're just going to talk about the two-handed power stance moveset, because when you two-hand these weapons, it does the power stance moveset itself. So I'm just going to talk about that in particular. By starting off with the claws, the light attack combo, I probably prefer it a little bit more than the fist combo, because the first initial swing is a double swipe at the exact same time, which is a lot nicer. As for the heavy attacks with the claws, don't really care for them as much. Some of the fist weapons do get the same type of heavy attacks, but with things like the cestus and the iron ball, they actually come out pretty fast, so they actually tend to be a lot better in that regard. As for the running attacks and heavy attacks, the claw running and heavy attacks are actually really good. But as for the fists, some of them actually aren't too bad in terms of like the ones that actually have the poking attacks, the piercing type ones, but the rest of them, like the cestus and the iron ball, I don't really care much for the running heavy attacks, because they don't really come out as fast as something like the claws actually do. So all in all, it's kind of can go one way or the other, so I'm just going to give 1 point to each. Okay, now getting into the Ash of War side of things. On screen right now is everything that the claws get that the fists do not. So now it's just literally Impaling Thrust. Impaling Thrust is a very decent option, especially for smaller base weapons, because they can stagger very nicely and do nice posture damage, which is something that small weapons don't really have much of an option to actually do. So it's very nice in that regard. However, as for the fists, what they get that claws do not get, literally nothing. The claws get everything that the fists get, so it's highly unfortunate in that regard. But as for the options themselves, both of these are very mid. Like, they're both like C tier options in terms of like what Ashes of War they actually do have available to them. They're the second worst in the entire game, right next to the whips, which actually hold the place for the worst amount of Ash of War options, which is highly unfortunate. Hopefully the DLC does add a bunch more specific types of Ash of War options. I don't know why Quickstep and Bloodhound Step aren't specifically used for smaller base weapons themselves. They can be used on anything, so like using things for claws and fists, it's kind of unfortunate that they don't have anything unique in that area. So yeah, but still I'm actually going to end up giving it to the claws on this one. Okay, now going over the best PvE options on screen right now is my top 5. The blue is for the claws and the yellow is for the fists. Now normally I do a top 10, but there aren't really many options to begin with, so a top 5 is just going to have to suffice. As always, I do have my own dedicated tier list for these, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but the link will be down below for those. But getting into the list itself, I do have the venomous fang at number 1. This one is the deadly poison weapon that actually can be infused, which is very good, because you can pair poison alongside like a bleed build or actually a scarlet rot build if you wanted to, or you can just go all into deadly poison and proc it very quickly, because deadly poison is pretty much just as good as scarlet rot. It does tick for a lot of damage, so this one's going to be my favorite option. But overall, I'll probably end up giving it to the fists themselves, because they do strike damage mainly, and strike damage is going to tend to be your better option compared to slash, because a lot more enemies tend to be weaker to strike themselves, and it's actually very nice in that regard. But as for the best options that the fists do get, the iron ball and the spike cestus do have very quick heavy attacks, and when you have fully charged heavy attacks with the fist type weapons, they actually do very good posture damage. So going into a build in that regard is probably going to be a lot more beneficial than something like the venomous fang actually will be, because the venomous fang is very reliant on things like status effects. So you probably end up finding more success with things like the iron ball and the spike cestus. So yeah, they're both very close. I'll probably end up giving them both like an A tier in that regard, but I'll probably lean a bit more to the fists. Now, as for the best PvP option, this one is a bit tough. Now, on screen right now is my top 5. I do have the spiked cestus at number 1. Now, this one does actually have the best moveset, does get bleed in very decent damage, so this one's a clear runaway winner. But I think I'd prefer the claws a little bit more. Like the average claw compared to the average fist, I tend to think it's just a better option because they just get more range. They think they get the better moveset in most cases, unless you're talking about the caestus weapon itself. But they do get things like innate bleed or innate poison, depending on which one you're using. Do get 110 crit multiplier as well. And I just prefer to have like the nice running attacks and the light attack combos that the claw weapons themselves actually do get. And I think they just get better overall damage potential as well. So I just would rather actually have the claw weapons, albeit they're both just as good. Once again, probably both A tier options in PvP. They're both really, really nice, but yeah, the claws might take this one out for me. Anyway, that pretty much concludes it for this one. On screen right now is the final score. Yes, the claw weapons ended up winning. However, I still don't even know which one I actually prefer. This has definitely been the closest versus battle thus far. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's always dependent on what weapon you're actually using itself. So yeah, doesn't really make much sense to actually compare them. But we learned something, so it's all good. Anyway, as always, please do like, subscribe, and do follow me on Twitch because I should be live by the time this video is out. And yeah, see you in the next one, guys. Bye.